John chapter 2, verse 1. Why don't we go ahead and stand for the reading of the word? We can. It says, in the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, they have no wine. And Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. Woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come. Then verse 13. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables, and said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence. Make not my Father's house an house of merchandise. I would like to speak for just the next few moments today on three cleansings. Three cleansings. Amen. You may be seated. We see in this first part of the chapter the marriage supper. And another translation to verse 4 is, Dear woman, that's not our problem. And that my time has not yet come. But it's always pondered me, I'd say honestly say for most of my life, what this verse meant. Like, we're talking about God in flesh here. We're talking about Jesus the Christ, the Messiah. And, if we look at it at point face value, we see Mary, and it gives her some precedence. It shows her as the mother of Jesus. It does give her an honorarium, so to speak. But then, as if to make sure that we no longer would think her any higher than Christ, or that she was to be worshipped, we see Jesus say, Woman, or Dear woman. So it knocks down the whole, I don't have to go down that road. You all know. But when it comes to the question, it still makes you ponder. It's like, all right, so his mom's bugging him. Jesus, they're out of wine. Marriage supper, it's not even been going on that much, and they have no wine. And that's when he says this, well, what do I have to do? Like, what's that have to do with us? Mine hour has not yet come. Now, there's some school of debate as to what the meaning of this is. Perhaps he was telling her that they hadn't got low enough yet on wine. But the argument for that is Mary said, there is no wine. So it sounds like they were pretty low from the get-go. But the argument nonetheless is, all right, well, Jesus, he's told this, and he's just telling her, don't worry about it yet, Mom. I don't want them to be able to misconstrue this, that he just added some water to the wine. That he just, stretched it. I want them to know the miracle. And that's why mine hour has not yet come. But I think, I'd love to say I cracked it, but in study, someone else has actually cracked it a little bit for me, and they said it, and then it popped in my brain like a firework, and it's like, that's it! And I'm going to share that with you today. So, he says, dear woman, that's not our problem. My time has not yet come. Or if you want to just keep it to the straightforward, because I kind of like hearing Jesus say, woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour has not yet come. No matter what, we get this pause, this reflection. But literally the next verse, the verse that I did not tell you I was going to read from, sister, because I didn't even put it on my own notes, is his mother saith unto his servants, whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. So Jesus is telling his mom, not yet. But Mary's like, okay, honey, whatever this guy tells you, do it. Right. Typical mom. It's as if she knows he is going to do something. Even though Jesus himself is saying, this may not be the time for me to do anything. Now you say, Brother Smith, what was it he was saying then? Like, what if his hour is not yet come? What then is it he was waiting for? I truly believe, I'm 99%-ish sure that the reason he said this was because he was really not planning, possibly, on making wine just yet. On this being the big reveal. But that he was actually waiting for verse 13. That he was going to go to the temple first. That he was going to, as the Jews' Passover was at hand, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. That he was going to find the temple in disarray. He was going to see the money changers. He was going to see the oxen and the sheep and the shekels. And he was going to turn it over. He was going to scourge it. That he would start his ministry cleansing the temple. Because, now does anybody know this? How many times did Jesus cleanse the temple? 3? Now we're just getting random guesses. Wasn't? Twice. Now we're going to go with something hypothetical, or not hypothetical, I can't think of the term for it, but my title is 3 Cleansings, so I can get where you get that. But he actually cleanses it twice. Did anybody else remember that in all of your study? Because this preacher, pastor, forgot it. I've always overlooked it. That he cleanses the temple twice. We know this is the beginning of his ministry. His first miracle, as it were, is water into wine. And then he cleanses the temple. But then we see we'll just use Matthew's account in verse 12 of chapter 21. We see him enter it again. This time at the end of his ministry. And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves, and said unto them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. And when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased. So I think it's interesting that he goes into the temple twice to cleanse it. He goes in twice to see it in disarray. Once in the beginning, once in the end. And I feel like it tells a message. Honestly, I think it speaks more messages than what we're talking about today. But that's what makes me feel that he was wanting this to be the first one. He was going to start his ministry going into the church house and telling them, this isn't right. We need to get this in order. He wanted to go in and try to bring order back into what should be the house of God, a house of prayer. But they had made it a den of thieves. Not just once, but he enters it the last time. And yet again, we see it in disarray. Yet again, and this time he screams out, it seems, even more. He calls out the fact that it should be a house of prayer. And that is why I think he perhaps said, mine hour has not yet come. In his mind, he was going to do something that would correlate. The wine correlates to us, yes. But in his mind, he was going to do something big. He was going to show the cleansing of the new tabernacle. And we know anything that has to do with tabernacle or temple ultimately is a reflection of us. We are a temple of the Most High God. We are a fleshly temple that His Spirit can reside in. So he shows the importance of being able to walk in and cleanse the room. But he also shows the humanity of literally the Christ walks in, cleanses the temple, and within 3 years, it's just as bad or worse. Now, that just baffles me. Like, you would have thought that even some of the priests there would have been insulted enough the first time to say, I can't believe he did this. You know, he's a little right. Let's do this out there. You know, you would have thought that in their humanity they would have said, I don't know what he's so mad about, but let's get the sheep outside. Let's get the manure off of the holy place. Let's go ahead. But just like us, they allow the oxen back in. They bring the doves back in. The sheep wander yet again. And that's where Jesus, he was showing, he's the cleansing. He's the power. He's the love. But we go back and then say, why then was it so important? Why would God listen to his, to this woman and say, what have I to do with thee? My time has not yet come. And then proceed to make water out of wine. Why wouldn't he just keep his mission? Because I know, he is touched with you and me. He's touched by the feeling of our infirmities. Scripture itself says that. But also, he's touched by faith. He's touched by trust. And it's as if, even though he had his mind made up that, all right, I'm meeting with John the Baptist on Monday. I'm going to get baptized. I'm going to fulfill that. I'm going to do that. And then this week, I'm going to go into the temple. Oh, yes, but we have a wedding that Thursday, so I've got to attend it. But everything goes away when this, I'm just going to say little old lady. I don't know how old she was at this point. I guess she wouldn't have probably been too old, probably 40s, because, she was young when she had Jesus. So, this middle-aged, younger lady, she's standing there. She says, Jesus, it's got bad. The wedding feast, it's barely been going on an hour. I'm just making this up. I don't know how long. But they're out of wine. They're out of wine. And even though he answers her saying, I have a schedule, she has faith now as a woman. Now that's important. Hear me now. Not as the mother of Jesus, not as Mary the mother, not as Virgin Mary, but as woman. She has the audacity to look at Jesus, say, this is the situation, be told, but then just tell everyone else, I don't know what his plans are, but whatever he says, do it. I'm going to trust him to do something because there's a situation that needs him. And I just have never known my God to look over a needful situation. I wish we could get this today. I'm talking about you and me. We are men. We are women. And sometimes I think just perhaps God does have a plan that he is going to move in this way. But he is looking for someone to come up and say, I'm out of wine. I need you. I need you in this situation. I need you in this job. I need you in this occupation. I need you in this whatever. I need you. And even though it would seem that he would look at you and say, man, what have I to do with you? Woman, what have I to do with you? If you would just hold on. If you would just say, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And just keep walking the line. Some water pots will show up. Some servants will appear. And Jesus will change his plans and fill your need. Now, we look at this miracle as if it was, they're just at a party. They're celebrating, maybe a friend. But the way the story speaks, it sounds like it was possibly next of kin. That possibly it was relation or someone very, very close, but that maybe, just maybe, this running out of wine was not only an insult to the bride and bridegroom, but even perhaps to them as a family, that they couldn't support it, that they couldn't do it. But Jesus looks in to the situation and moves in as only he is able to do, and multiplies. He turns water into wine. His mother saith unto her, whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there just happened to be 6 water pots of stone sitting there. These were water pots made for the manner of purifying of Jews, for the washing of hands. These were water pots made to be used for possibly even personal hygiene in the sense. But God was able to turn it around and was able to take this water that was able to purify the body and now satisfy the spirit. He changes his plan, but he still teaches a lesson. We see Moses and Jesus, that God chooses to reflect who he is in ways of foreshadowing. That you would see Moses as a leader, that he would, the first miracle that takes place, if I'm not corrected, is what? Water into blood. He turns the water into blood. It's death. And this is how Moses walks into the situation. This is the first plague poured out by the leader. But it turns into the first thing poured out by God in this chapter is water into wine. We go from death to life. And it's as if just maybe, perhaps Jesus said, I can still use this. I'll still go to the temple next week. But I think I'm going to make wine today. I think I'm going to bring life today. The Gospel of Matthew, it talks of how in the end of his ministry that he goes to the temple. They're crying Hosanna. It's the triumphant entry. And they're crying out praises. They're crying out Hosanna in the highest. And he goes through the crowds and he is lifted up as a king. And then he goes to the temple and just ticks them all off. Well, at least the higher ones. You know, the priests, the rabbis. He goes in and he overthrows the tables again. He kicks over some tables. He cries out, my house, my Father's house. It's supposed to be, no, my house shall be called a house of prayer. But ye have made it a den of thieves. And then proceeds to heal. Proceeds to restore. He casts out the discreditation of, I want to say Christianity, but it's just Judaism at this point. The worship of the I am. He takes away the discredit, because I'm sure there were some rumors about it's just a get-rich scheme on the priest's part. You know what happens. Now, I know I already talked about this a little Wednesday, but please bear with me as I do it again. We see them, you know, you're walking into town. You came from, you're a Jew from, 2 days camel ride. And you have the best of your sheep. You're of the class that you're able to you bring a sheep to God. Because God always made a way for someone to bring him a sacrifice, depending on the class or poverty. Sometimes it would be a dove, but if you were in this bracket, you brought this bracket. So let's say you're bringing a little sheep to the temple for sacrifice. You know you have done wrong. You know you are a sinner, and that you have to have a sacrifice, that it is not only due, but it is needed. So you make your 2-day travel into Jerusalem. You get to the temple priest and you say, this is Baba. I love him. He's the best of my flock. There's not a blemish on him. Maybe a little dust. I apologize that, but it's been 2 days. Would you check him over? I want to give him to God. And the priest says, well, sure, let me take a look at him. I'll inspect him right now. And he picks up Baba. All right, look, his eyes are right. Nothing wrong with his ears. Has a nice fur coat. And yeah, I think he'll do good. And then there's just a little bit of blood or something that he has. Not in all cases. Sometimes it was real. They were looked for blemishes, but you can't tell me that just perhaps every once in a while the priest wanted to make a shekel. Oh, but that's not going to work. What are you talking about? Blood. This guy's not clean. You're going to have to bring me another. No, you got to understand. I came for 2 days, and this is the only one I have, and that's without blemish, and this is the best one I have. You gotta, I'm sorry, but his leg looks a little crooked. All right. I guess I won't be able to make sacrifice. No. You can still make sacrifice. We got sheep over here. In fact, in the temple, the place you're supposed to pray? We got a herd of them. Why don't you just go and get one of those and we'll offer it in place. I'll take Baba. Oh, thank you, sir. That's great. That is awesome. So it's just a trade? No, it'll be 15 shekels. Oh, okay, 15 shekels. Thank you. So now he trades in his sheep. He goes over. He brings out his money pouch. All right, I need to buy one of them. Here's 15 shekels. Whoa. No, that's Roman money. You need temple money. For temple tax, temple money. So, sorry, that's not going to cut it. But you're in luck. We have a money changer. He's over there on the corner of the temple. The place is supposed to be a house of prayer. If you talk to him, old Joe, he'll take care of you. He'll hook you up. All right, so now he walks over to Joe, the money changer. Hey, I got to purchase a lamb. Priest told me it's 15 shekels. Here you go, 15. Joe looks at it. Is that Roman money? Yeah. Don't you know there's a little bit of a change here? That's why we're the money changers, dude. So 15 of yours. No, I'm just making this up. You can Wikipedia me later. 15, I'm sorry, it's 30. 30 shekels? Yep, 30 shekels of Rome to make 15 of this. And then you can go back and purchase. So he pulls out his last shekel. 29 and 30. Okay, I'm safe. I can finally do what I've came here to do. He hands it off, gets his temple tax, goes over. I'd like to buy the lamb, 15 shekels. Perhaps it's Baba that they just wipe the blood off of. Perhaps it's a new lamb that came its way. But nonetheless, he now has a lamb, and he's able to go to the priest and say, will you offer him to God? We can do that, buddy. Thank you. Stamp of approval. And the process is complete. And for this man, he's good. He's finally done everything. He's brought a lamb. So he walks away feeling that his sin is going to be forgiven or atoned. It's going to be pushed forward until Messiah. Something's going to take place. But the whole thing has been travesty. The whole thing has been an annoyance. It's been something to take him for what he's worth. And I'm sure some people went through this process and they walked away saying this is a joke. That's no temple. Maybe God was there once. He's definitely not there now. And that's why Jesus shows up on the scene. That's why Jesus, I think, just perhaps maybe made it his first mission, because he wanted to restore the temple. Because he wanted to show you and me that we have to have restoration, and that ultimately he is the cleanser, that he can do it. That it doesn't matter how much your temple smells like cow dung. It doesn't matter how many sheep have been proffered off in wrong ways. If you come to him, can you hear me out there? If you come to him, he can make you clean. He can make you whole. And that's why I just think that you were his first initiative. That when he looked at Mary, he said, I don't know about this. This isn't why I came. I'm not here so that they can have a party. I'm not here so that they can have a drink. I'm here so they can remember what the sacrifice is about. But yet he still was touched. And he pours out wine for the party. He pours out living waters, as it were, and shows what he's capable of, and then goes forth with his mission, and then goes forth with what he planned to do. But then only 3 years later, it's unfit. It's unfit again. Would you, I don't want to be mean, but would you mind taking? I just want the children, I don't want anybody to be discouraged or not being able to pay attention. And this is important. He brings this about so that he can show what he'll still do for you. For us, it would be easy to look over it and just say, he cleansed the temple once. Because that's what we all think of. We always just think of, he cleansed the temple once. Unless you're possibly better studier. And I'm not saying I'm anything great, like you have to really try to be better than me. Don't take me wrong. I'm just saying, like, maybe you've read this week and you already put it together. Maybe you've already had a mental note of, how many times did he do this? He cleansed the temple twice. But for me, I always forget it, Sister Smith. I always think in my head that he did it once, and that it was before he became the sacrifice. I honestly never really put it together that he did it twice. And that makes me ask why. Because he knew it would get dirty again. Sorry, I'm getting a little excited because I know where I'm going. He knew the first time, Brother Richard, that in 3 years they would bring some stinky old sheep back in again. That some doves would fill up the room again. That human nature would take place again. Just like you and me. Now let me turn this around for a minute. So we're cleansed when we are filled with the new wine. When he turns this old soul into something new and he puts in his spirit and fills us with new wine, he makes us whole. He walks into this temple and he casts it all out and he makes us a house of prayer. But we don't always stay that way. We make mistakes. We mess up. We go down the wrong road. We take a wrong turn. We get angry or mad, or we're human. And every once in a while, a goat makes its way into the temple. And it shouldn't have even been there in the first place. The sheep make their way back into the temple, but the sacrifice has already been given, brother. The temple has already been cleansed. The sacrifice has already came. He had already done it in your life. But you make the mistake. And the devil says you're flat on your face. That there's no hope for you. That you're on the ground. I've come to tell you today, he'll cleanse it again. He'll cleanse it again. He'll do it the second time, if that's what it means. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Don't backslide out of this thing, but hold on to him. Let his house be called a house of prayer again. Because he'll do it. He'll do it. He'll do it. He cleanses us with the new wine and casts out the things in the temple. And then if we fall and fail, which we will, he'll do it again. But for him, I'd like to say, I could turn this around and say that's the 3 cleansings I came to speak about. Being filled with the new wine. Getting everything knocked out of your life that shouldn't be there. And then knowing if you fail, falter, or backslide, that he'll do it again. But I don't think that's it. I believe that the 3rd time he cleansed the temple, it was if, Brother Andy, he just went ahead and he just passed over the temple altogether. He looks at a bunch of misfits, a motley crew, as he's ascending into heaven. And he tells them, go to Jerusalem and tarry until you be endued with power from on high. And the disciples, we don't see them entering the temple. We don't see them walking in and saying, all right, he said to stay in Jerusalem. Where else would be better to go than the house of God? No, instead we see them go into an upper room. And they begin to pray. They begin to tarry. They wait on the Lord. And then, now I don't have to go back through it. We talked about it on Pentecost Sunday. The sound of a mighty rushing wind. Pentecost became an experience that they were filled with the power of the Holy Ghost. That God made them new. But I think just perhaps he purposely did it in an upper room and not a temple. He had already cleansed those 2 times. But now he showed the disciples, you are the temple. You. I've went into the brick and mortar twice, and each time I've found money changers. Each time I've found just devilry. I've found things that shouldn't happen. Each time. But this time, I'm coming for you. I'm going to do something for you. And the power that he pours out there is the power that never has to leave and can stay with us. But he doesn't stop there. He still moves, but now he moves over people that run to the temple. Acts 3, and I'm just going to read it very fast. You don't even have to worry about the verses, sister, because I'm going to bounce. In Acts 3:1, we see that Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour. And a certain man, he was lame from his mother's womb, and he had to be carried. And they laid him daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, this beautiful gate. And he would ask alms. That was the way he made money. That was how he got his bread for the day. So his friends or his family, they would take him there. He would ask for alms. He would leave there and be fed. But it says, who, seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked an alms. And Peter, fastening his eyes upon him with John, said, look on us. So, alms for the poor, help me please. Alms, I can't walk. I'm in one spot. Alms for the poor, help me. I've only made this today. Would you, sirs, help me, sirs? But Peter, fastening his eyes upon him with John, said, look at us. And he gave heed unto them. And he's expecting to receive something of them. The fact that these guys got his attention, they say, look at us. He's thinking, man, this is going to be big. This is going to be good. Something's going to happen. But Peter says, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have, give I thee. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up. And immediately his feet and his ankle bones received strength. And he, leaping up, stood and walked. And then I love this. Entered with them into the temple. Walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God. And they knew that it was he which sat for alms at that beautiful gate of the temple. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at that which had happened unto him. What does that have to do with anything, Brother Smith? I'm glad you asked. So as I said, he's touched by you. He can switch course for you. He can alter plans and engagements for you. And he will cleanse you. And he'll cleanse you again. But then, for this, I believe we can live. The temple had been cleansed 2 times. The 3rd time, it was just worshiped in like it should be. It was cleansed, but maybe not with a dustpan or a mop. I don't know. I should have studied to see if it quickly fell back into disarray, or if maybe perhaps the 2nd time was the message to them that maybe we should do this outside. I don't know. Something tells me it probably fell back into disarray, Sister Amy. Something tells me that there's a good chance that the money changers, after they heard Jesus had died, all right, let's go ahead and bring it back in. But Jesus no longer worried about that. He worried about us. And he let the cleansed ones walk back in to the temple. The third cleansing is for you and for me. That we can carry him wherever we go. That we can take him with us even to the ends of the world. That at the end of the day, we should be able to take him into empty rooms and still praise God like that layman, and allow the presence of God to just infiltrate the area that we are now become his sons and his daughters, that we are able to walk into this thing. Isn't that cool? You're his sons and daughters. There's no grandchildren. No grandchildren. Sons and daughters. You're born into this thing. You're my son. You're my daughter. You're my own. That it is no, wonder what's going to happen when great-great-grandma passes. Great-great-grandpa, there's no separation. You are heirs and joint heirs with Christ. So that you can have this freedom to know that he is there for you and that he loves you as a child. That he loves you with a spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. This selection that tells us that there is no getting rid of you. I've adopted you. I've called you my own. I've cleansed you. I've cleansed you again. And I'll cleanse you again. And I'll cleanse you again. I'll do what I have to do to keep you. If you do what you have to do to live for me. Can we stand? Dear woman, it's not our problem. My time has not yet come. Just listen to anything he tells you. Do it. I think it's time that we get a little bit of that faith in us. That we realize, all right, I was full of some oxen and sheep. That my heart smelled like a pig pen. But God. And he cleansed me up. He washed me. He turned me around. He made me whole again. So I can trust him that he's faithful to do it yet again. That when I fall and I falter and I fail, that I can look and say, God. And he reminds me that he took the time to clean out a temple. I mean, think about it. And it was a temple. Couldn't he have just put that into a parable and saved the work? Couldn't he have just said, and once there was a man that came to the temple and saw that it was in the current state. And he told the money changers, get out. And he kicked over the tables and said, my house is to be a house of prayer. Remember that. Couldn't he have done that? I think he probably could have. But he made it his mission to show it and to give you the audacity to turn some tables in your own life. To make sure that you're ready for his cleansing. To make sure that you are surrendered to him. And that even when it feels like his hour has not yet come in your life, if you cry out to him and you make yourself the servant and say, I'll do whatsoever you have me to do. I'll be the servant. I'll know this thing. It's cool. I'm sorry, I'm keeping you, but servants, they know everything that's going on. They always have the inside. Everybody in the wedding party, they're like, man, this wine's pretty good. Hey, dude. Most of the time, they bring the good stuff out first, and then when everybody's been drinking a little bit, Then they bring out the older stuff. But you waited for the best at last. And then the servants are there like, that's not what happened at all. Jesus did it. Did you hear what Jesus did? Did you hear what Jesus did? Did you hear what Jesus did? You're his servants. You have the inside view. When the world's calling out for hope, when the world is broken and helpless, you're the servant that is able to say, I know what he does with water buckets, and I know what he can do for you. I've seen him kick over money-changing tables, yes, but I've also seen him use upper rooms. I know he is able to do exceeding and abundantly above all that we could ask or even think. Amen and